Nope, not today. You're not going to get me today, my friends. I am prepared. I've got my coloring book. It came in yesterday. Actually, I'm not very prepared because I did forget to buy the mailers that you put these in and then mail them. So they will be here in a week and a half. So a little late on that, but that's coming. This week on my video, I did want to share with you how I created these bone pendants. This is all made out of bones, and this one's called the giraffe. And I have several more. I've wanted to put these on my website and sell them along with the coloring books and then other random things I'm going to be making over the next few months to put up for sale. So I'm super excited about that. Anyway, we're going to get started and talk about how to make those pendants. Here we go. We're going to make these macabre bone pendants. I purchased the silver rounds from the craft store in 1 inch and 1.5 inch, and I had one square one also. I also have a box out I'll keep my project in for the duration of this. I add double stick tape to the foam underneath to keep my pendants from moving around. Yeah, I finally get to use that blackest black paint again. I'm going to go ahead and put several coats of paint down in the bottom of these pendants and make sure that they're all nicely covered. Then I'll just use my fingernail and scrape any paint that made it outside of the edges to make it look more crisp and clean. Now I've gathered all those bones I took out of the owl pellets several videos back and sorted them, cleaned them, and have got them ready for this project. I had 15 pendants I wanted to create, but I usually make a skull, owls, and fairies, but this time around I made giraffe, a cat, and the cow skulls are really great, but they wouldn't fit inside the pendants. I ended up only making 14 and keeping the 15th pendant for a later idea. Now that I made my designs, I need to glue the bones down into the pendants before I pour the resin in, otherwise they would just float around. Putting the glue onto the back of the glass is really easy when you're doing small things, and then I've got my toothpick out for easy use. I'll use the toothpick, put down the glue into the pendant, and then wipe the excess glue off the toothpick. And it's still a little sticky, so I'll go ahead and touch that bone and put it down onto the glue. And hopefully it'll release. Sometimes it doesn't, and it can cause you a couple seconds of pain, but it's all right. It's easy to figure out after a while of use. It was at this point that I forgot to do another step, so let's go do that now. It's time to stop. It's satin varnish time. We need to put this on both the front and the backs of the bones. Otherwise, when you pour the resin on, it will soak into the bone, giving them a transparent look. Now, I'm not going to lie, NGL. But this was very difficult to do because every little piece stuck to the brush and moved around and everything got jumbled, and I just had to keep everything in its space. But let you know, this is difficult and a very important step. Woo! Now that that's over with, let's go to the next step and putting the bones onto the pendants again. And we'll take this 5 minutes down to 10 seconds as I finish up this pendant and just put everything on there. I want to make sure all that glue is dry too before I pour the resin. We have all 14 complete. They look great. Let's take a closer look at them. The top row, we've got a couple skulls. We got some fairies with wings and without, and an owl. Down here, we've got the giraffe, cat, another couple fairies, and a couple more owls. I put a little dab of glue on the backs of these and glued them down to this ruler so the clasp hung over the edge and they could lay flat. I got my supplies out for pouring my resin, my gloves, toothpicks, wood sticks, some little cups, the resin, rubbing alcohol, and some rags for easy cleanup. To mix my resin, I'll first put my gloves on, then I'll pour part A into a cup to a certain measurement. Then I'll pour part B into another cup at that same measurement. Then I'll pour them both into another cup and start stirring for 3 minutes. I used the rags with the rubbing alcohol to wipe down the containers after I was done pouring them into the little cups so they wouldn't be sticky or develop a crust over time. Now I'm stirring the resin. It begins very cloudy. I want to keep my stick in the resin. I don't ever want to take it out. It'll create more bubbles if I do that. And I'm doing a figure 8 pattern, just slowly going around. It starts out cloudy and it'll end up much more clear as I go. Now this will be perfect if you had a vacuum machine. You go put the resin in and it'd pull all the bubbles out of it, but I'm going to do the torch method later on. When stirring the resin, also make sure you get the sides and the bottom thoroughly mixed in. I felt I was pretty brave by putting these all on one platform, assuming I wasn't going to make a mistake or a major spill and have to tear them all off and clean everything. But actually, I had no problem, so I was pretty lucky this time. I'll just gently pour my resin into each one. And as I go, I'm going to torch these every so often, and the resin will actually shrink down a little bit. And sometimes it'll shrink more as it gets into cavities and other holes, and then I can keep blowing those bubbles out. Now, like I said, if I had a vacuum machine, it'd really help me get those bubbles out, especially when some of them hide underneath and don't come out till later in the curing process, and you'll see the bubble and it's too late to fix it. And besides using a torch to deal with bubbles or the vacuum machine, whichever you want to call that, you can also use a toothpick and you can kind of poke at the bubbles and pull them up almost out of there too. And remember to go back and look at it. You might need to add some more resin after they've shrunk down into there. You've torched them, they shrunk a little bit more, add a little bit of resin, get them all the way up, bubbled up above that pendant. It should look like a little bubble above it. Right before the flood breaks and it goes over the edge, that's what you're looking for. And I'll use my torch every 5 minutes up to maybe 45 minutes to get rid of all the bubbles. Now, if I don't have a torch, I can use my carbon dioxide from my own exhalation onto it. But when you do that, you can actually leave some swirly patterns because of the moisture of your breath. So using a torch is really great, but the best would be that vacuum machine I mentioned several times. And I'm just going back and fixing it again, little areas, trying to make sure that bubble is high enough. Later on, when I was done, I noticed the draft didn't have as good of a bubble. I could add more resin and create that if I want. And to keep it dust free, I'm going to take that box, flip it upside down over that, and let it sit for 24 hours. And 24 hours later, they have cured. I'm just going to twist this off the platform and I'll scrape the glue off the back of the pendant. I've had these not cured before. They were sticky, so I had to sand and scrape away, cut out the top layer of resin, and re-pour resin over that, and that seemed to work really well. Now, I was talking about how if you pour the resin in without putting the sealer on, you can have a transparent look. This is an example of what it can look like. I purchased this multi-pack of cords, or 24 inches, for my pendants. What I really like is that parts of these stick up and you can feel them. It's quite interesting. Over time, you could rub these smooth, almost flat to the other resin, but I've had resin jewelry before and it doesn't take more than a few years for this to start get scuffed up, and you can rebuff it and everything, but it's quite a unique piece that can change over time. We've got them finished. We've got the old ones. Let's take a peek at the old ones. Got different ones on there. Really cool. And we'll go over to the new ones. Now, I'm sorry I don't have a fancy way to display these. I spent a couple hours yesterday trying to figure out how to photo shoot these for my website, and every attempt failed. So I'm just trying to figure out how to do that for now. That will be one of the challenges I'll be facing next for my website. Hey, thank you so much for joining me. I'm Tami Walker. Please remember to like and subscribe to my channel. It really helps me out. I'm a full-time artist. I work around the clock creating anything that pops in my head, and I just love to share it with you. I'm so excited about it. Thank you so much for joining me. Have a great one. Bye. Originally, I used a Space Odyssey song for this, and it worked out really well, but copyright. This could be the 15th pendant. I mean, I don't know. It's cute.